Hello, people of the internet, and welcome to another Wednesday's serial. I'm going through my monthly books. It's a way to relax. Recently was in the hospital because I thought I was having a heart attack, but it just turned out to be a panic attack or stress or something bad. Yay. So comics are fun, a lot more fun than work. Uh, yeah. Oi. So this month is, I think, relatively more interesting than some of the more recent ones for a what comics have I read recently? Because there's a lot more in here, and a lot more is not my Marvel and DC fare, though that's in here too. Um, though I guess it's funny when I organize my books, I have like an X-Men pile, kind of a Spider-Man and other Marvel pile, and then I have my other comics pile, and that includes DC. I treat DC like a smaller publisher now because it just fits with how much I get. So, first off is the Armageddon game with Ninja Turtles. Things are heating up, and then 134, and it's all moving along. I loving this story. I already forgot what issue ends where and what bleeds into what, which I've talked about the convention of the eventness of it all being my least favorite part of this, but beyond that, the stories are cool. The character development is really interesting to see. Not only where the turtles are going with all this, but also where the machinations of everyone else is going. And it's really interesting to see Tom Waltz's plot driven push take advantage of all the character motivation and all the little setups that um, Campbell's run has been slowly dripping out. And with that, it feels really, it's like we've had this pressurized bottle waiting to go, and now it's just popped. Which, as much as I haven't loved the turtles for the past year or so as much, it feels like there's so much fruition for it now that makes what I liked less have more value now, which is really cool to see. Um, I also got the Ninja Turtles Saturday morning cartoon issue 2. These read just like an episode of those old cartoons. If that's your flavor of turtles, I would suggest checking it out. I'm getting this mostly out of completionism, frankly, but it's a fun little read. Uh, then we have the first issue of our new Deadpool run, headed by Wong, and Coachello is also on here and has a interesting take with the character. This is Deadpool in the Krakoa era. It's He's technically on X Force, but seeing where this is playing and playing with characters that are taking advantage of Deadpool's position in Marvel and the moment um, is actually really interesting. And this book starts with a ticking clock, essentially, and ends up there. And Deadpool's mission is to assassinate Dr. Octopus. There's something that gets in the way, and obviously he's not going to kill Dr. Octopus, but it's really interesting to see where it goes. And we've never actually seen Deadpool and Dr. Octopus interact before. Two characters I'm pretty well invested in, so I don't know. For a first issue, I'm really interested. The energy's there, the comedy's there, the action's there. Uh, the thing to see next over the next couple of issues is whether or not this develops into kind of a longer story. Though there's a chance it may not, with the way, especially the X-Men books are running right now. Every run is like 6 issues, and then they flop over to another thing, which kind of incentivizes smaller stuff, even though some of that isn't quite true either. Um, so I don't know. I'm curious to see where it goes, but if it is a quick jaunt with a fun Deadpool thing, I'm there for it because we haven't had a proper Deadpool book in about a year now. So I don't know. I'm ready for the next. Uh, Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, it continues to be just a confusing read. I can't wait for this to be over. And then Daredevil 5. Um, we're finally really picking up momentum with this fist versus hand arc that they're pushing for. I'm liking it. One thing I don't like in this, that I think actually is really funny, is they gave Daredevil this really bushy beard. I don't like it. I don't think it works, and I don't think Daredevil with a beard is a bad idea. But something a little closer. This just unfurled thing. I don't know. Now that he's married to Elektra, just isn't clicking for me. It also feels like for a blind guy, having something there like that would be more distracting for them. I don't know. Then we had Amazing Spider-Man 13, which is all the hobgoblins, and this is a story that's trying to play off of so many years of continuity and just throwing it at you and assuming you know it's all there. And I've read around some of these stories and parts of some of these stories, but not the entirety of it. And this was hard to follow for me. And I know there's lots of people who have a deeper love of Spider-Man than I do, and certainly have gone through those Hobgoblin stories in a way I haven't. But if I'm having trouble following these stories, and a lot of these are pulling from like the 80s, the 90s, early 90s, like uh, it's a bit of a deep continuity pool for kind of just a there's a lot of hobgoblins book. I think it's a bit of a miss with continuity, but I think that's going to happen from time to time with something like Amazing. And then we spin, if you will, right into Dark Web, and we get the Chasm Madeline Pryor thing going. Um, I'm curious to see where this goes. I accidentally got a variant cover because the way I order things, not thrilled about that. This issue is interesting too, because this is one of those rare issues where they focus on the villains, so you don't actually see Peter Parker in there. Um, I don't know. I didn't love it, but I was so enthralled to get kind of a more uh, paced and placed comic for once that I was enjoying the divergence, even if it wasn't the best. Um, and then on the other side of it, we have the end of the Spider Verse Part Two with Slot's new run. I'm finding that this time I'm feeling all the complaints I heard about the last Spider Verse event. That it just feels like there's too much, and they're just playing on cute ideas of Spider Man, and it's just a little insufferable, and it's just random ideas being mashed together, things like this. And I'm feeling all those complaints this time. I'm not feeling the love or the fandom I did for the previous installments with this. So, especially given that it's Dan Slott's return to Spider-Man, it's a bit of a rough ride. I'm hoping it's done relatively quickly, and then maybe we get another good Dan Slott story, and then see where we're at. Gold Goblin, part of the Dark Web thing, is playing with Norman being the good Green Goblin, which is kind of akin to the Phil, who was one of the hobgoblins in the other book, being a good Green Goblin. And I don't know. I see the idea of what they're going for, but this idea of redeeming the irredeemable villain just for inevitably for it to fall again, especially with a villain like Green Goblin, just feels hollow. It'd be like them redeeming the Joker and Batman working with him. Just doesn't, like, you see where they're going and you see the story potential, but it just why it's not really enjoyable for everyone. You know where it's going to end up. You know it's a flash in the pan, and it just doesn't work. And then the mini Deadly Neighborhood Spider-Man continues playing off the Demon Bear from New Mutants from way back when with crazy psychedelic art. Again, even if you're not a huge Spider-Man fan, but you're looking for kind of offbeat comic, I think this one's worth picking up outside of everything. And then this month we get Spider-Man: The Lost Hunt, which is J.M. Mateus's next Craven thing because he writes Craven more than he writes Spider-Man. I found it enjoyable, but entirely missable. We'll see how it goes, but um, I don't know. It's fine. It's interesting, but I also don't think there's really much of anything being added here. And for as classic as those comics are now, it's really hard to see what else you would add, especially because I mean, like, there was Craven's Last Hunt, and then there was The Child Within, and then there was The Soul of the Hunter, or maybe The Soul of the Hunter went before. I'd have to check my dates on that. And then there was the Craven stuff he did in Spectacular after all of that. And then there was kind of a return to Craven that he did more recently, and then Joe Kelly did some stuff with Craven, and it's just I don't know. I think it might be a bit played out. Um, Next is Wildcats, which I was really excited for, and DC doing a different book and playing with these characters that they've been sitting on their laurels with for basically a decade now. Um, it's fun, but it's essentially reinventing the wheel and shoving the Wildcats idea into the DC mythos, and you know it's not going to have the kind of Alan Moore twist that came in with the war, and they're just going to have a war with the Demonites, and it just makes it all kind of generic. And they're really playing up Grifter being a badass, and everybody knows Grifter. Oh man, because he's the popular one. Um, I don't know. This feels like a bad fans' interpretation of the Wildcats, more from the cartoon than the comic that was, and then playing it up here. And I don't know. It could be fun. It's only going to be 6 issues. I'll write it out for at least that long. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd recommend it to others. I've been so hungry for a Wildcats comic for so long. I'm willing to just go along for the ride. Uh, Damage Control continues. This is a kind of humor that is just lost on me. And I gotta be honest, I don't think it's great comic book humor writing. This is from the writers of some TV show that's popular right now. And writing humor for TV and comics is not the same at all. In TV, you really almost have to rely on inflection and how long things are said or how long the pauses are in between. You can't do that with comics. With comics, you really have to pace how the reader's going through the comic and find the beats that you you have to like control their reading speed in a way, and you have to rely more on the situation and the visuals than the dialogue. And this is really relying on the dialogue and the back and forth, which doesn't work the same way for comics. I'm not saying that can't be done. Obviously, like Cable and Deadpool, there was a lot of that and whatnot, but it was snappier. Here, there's these just kind of bloated. Of course, I opened to an ad. Um, kind of things where it's kind of people talking. You can tell that they're supposed to have kind of a way they're talking, but it doesn't go, and it's just a little too wordy for this stuff to land. And you can see the artist trying to get there, and I'm sure this is landing for some people. It just didn't for me. And then Offbeat, the new Thunderbolts run is going. I think this is a fun run. I don't think using the name Thunderbolts quite fits, but Marvel's really bastardized that from what it originally was. Kind of like X Force. Um, so I don't know. It's fun. I'm gonna play it out. I'm enjoying the characters and everything. I want a proper Thunderbolts book back too at the same time. Let go of the titles, I guess. Oh, by the way, brought to you by Suntory Whiskey. Because um, I gotta be honest, this Robin book, I skimmed. I was trying to read it, but I gotta be honest, this art in particular, just whoops, sorry, um, pulls me out. I don't know. I Nothing about this book is connected with me, so I don't know. Next, because they seem to be a safe investment, I guess, which isn't really my thing, but it's hard to ignore. No. Okay, good. Sorry, had a computer problem. Um, this Wonder Woman with the first appearance of Nubia came out, facsimile comic. What's fun for this one for me versus a lot of others, because I also got a facsimile and I don't have it here, but of New Mutants 98. That's a comic I read. I got it because I know that's going to be worth more than what I paid for it in 3 months. Um, and I might keep that so I can sell the original one. This is an era of Wonder Woman and a lot of comics I've never really read. So this was kind of a fun little time capsule to go and read just in its own right. It was more fun to kind of just take in the affectations, how the art was done, how things were done, and how things were presented, more so than the comic itself. So, I mean, for one little offshoot, I had a blast looking through it. And then we started in on more Marvel. Again, I ordered a friggin' variant because of the idiotic site. Um, Gambit number 5. This continues to be a really fun book, and even if you don't like the current X-Men, but if you're looking for a good Gambit book, this is the first good solo Gambit book. It's only this long. It's written by Claremont. Uh, it's Gambit going off into the world and having a misadventure with the de-age Storm. Uh, it, it was a flash from the past, and it was great. And of these kind of Marvel bringing back their old guard to do a project here and there, I think it's one of the strongest. I just had a blast with it. Speaking of having a blast with it, Fantastic Four number 1. This comic was really good, and also this is actually I bought 2 copies. I got a damaged copy. Um, this one's very rolled. It's not showing too. Maybe you can see it. Um, I'm becoming a bit more of a condition type person. Also, I bought this new. They refunded me for it when I showed them how damaged it was, so it's not like I'm going too far off the limb. I bought another copy, and I'm gonna keep that in my collection. So I this was really fun. This was a thing in Alicia going out and having a misadventure in a small town, and it's great. It's also kind of a weirdly bold choice for a Marvel number 1 to just kind of have this standalone story that has a tie to a bigger thing, but which is what happened to the Fantastic Four, which is very akin to where we were with the Robinson run, which in years was a while ago, but in Fantastic Four runs was a couple runs ago. Um, and I don't know, it's just this bold idea to have a single self contained story be your number 1, and then we're probably just going to have another one next month. And something about that is just so refreshing. Just not something that's just going to bleed into the next month, but something I'm looking forward to reading next month because I don't have to hinge so heavily on remembering weird little details like I do for basically everything else in this pile. Um, Next is Frank Miller Presents Ancient Enemies. And this is a Dan DiDio written comic. I tried it. I don't like it. I don't think I've ever liked a Dan DiDio comic, though, to be fair. I have nothing against the guy in general. And I think some of the stuff he's written seems like, a fair shake. But this didn't grab me. They already have a spin-off coming, which is weird. Um, I don't know. I'm trying all the Frank Miller Present books I thus far that I've seen. Um, but this one I have tried and I'm putting down. Next is Eve, Children of the Moon. This interesting story about some of the last people and getting into the society, and then this has our main characters standing at the gate where they left at the beginning of last issue. An entire story happens, and then they get to walk into the gate at the very end. So we don't you get to see really what's beyond the gate yet, and that's a pacing problem. I mean, it's just I don't know. I'm going to see this mini through at this point, but I don't know. It's got some interesting stuff, but I don't think there's anything that's groundbreaking or you're missing by not getting it. But you would be missing a lot if you don't pick up Hitome. This is a samurai book seen through Western comics, but holy crap, check out this art. It's like traditional Japanese paintings in with different kind of ideals and colors brought through to a comic book sensibility, brilliant use of whites, and then the word bubbles are all white with white trails, no lines or really thin lines, and then the panels have the white break instead of the normal panel break, and which just adds this painting feeling, and it just goes through, and there's a number of characters. Hitome is an abandoned girl who's looking for vengeance, and this um and it's the black samurai who she's trying to learn from, and there's just all this intersection of ideas and history and looks, and I've been saying a lot, especially for a lot of these shorter indie comics, like, did it really need to be a comic? This probably would have been easier as a short story and honestly maybe more successful. This book, no, 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 no. This is a comic through and through. They may want to adapt this to something, but even adapting it to animation would be a very different look and feel. You'd have to adapt more than just kind of the story to them. Like the look and feel would have to be adapted. This is a comic and it is excellent, and I definitely believe everyone should check this out. Next was Gospel, which is very much about a story about stories. It blends the time frame of who's telling stories just kind of fluidly, so things just kind of shift on you page to page, panel to panel. It's interesting in certain aspects. It reminds me of Sandman, but it didn't fully grab me. I also feel like this is maybe the kind of story that is disserviced by going issue by issue. There might be something a lot larger here, but they have to interweave the beginning with the end. I mean, it's a story about stories, and if you're going to have a three-act structure and you're only getting a sliver of it, it almost by structure isn't going to work if you only give the first fifth or whatever. So I'm going to be really curious to see what other people say when this hits trade, and it might be something I revisit at that point. But issue by issue, ain't no way. Um, Next is Junkyard Joe, and this second issue is incredible. so much better than the first and so much different from the first. Makes me really curious to see where it's going to go now. The first was like a war comic with this character. This one now has one of those soldiers now doing a kind of Peanuts esque comic. They're definitely using Schultz style when they're showing the actual like comic strip because this is a newspaper comic that the character's doing within this comic story. Um, and he thinks he imagined Junkyard Joe, didn't believe he was real. Like all these people told him you're just imagining it, but part of it is it's his career, so they kind of humor it. And then Junkyard Joe visits him, and then people get murdered. And then we'll see where it goes from there. Spoilers, I guess, but I mean, I'm telling you some of the highlights here, but I promise you, I haven't really spoiled anything. This comic is this is the kind of comic that's great for that because you really do need to read it beyond just the plot beats. Um, I I'm excited to see where it goes. Kaya is one that I am giving up on. Wes Craig is using a weird art style to tell this kind of very primalistic, like hunter tale sort of thing. I know a lot of people in my YouTube comics orbit have to be loving this book, or would be loving this book if they were picking it up, but it's just not so much my thing. I think I've given it a fair shot at this point, and it's just not the one that's grabbing me. But it is really interesting. I just feel like the weird cutesy art style versus this very primal fight or flight survival nature thing just is not connecting for me. And then Pink Lemonade continues with this kind of play on edgier comics versus comics are supposed to be fun thing, continuing in a new angle off of the characters that they've already established. I I am just having fun with this. I think if one of the best, now maybe I said this last time and I forget, but I think if you're a fan of Madman, I think this is worth checking out. I think that's the closest thing to this that I could reach to. Um, so yeah, I don't know. And in general, I just think this is a book people should be picking up. I'm sure very few people are. It's an Oni press book, and Oni puts out some good stuff, but they do so sporadically that I think a lot of people don't necessarily look for them if they have to shop by publisher. So a Mindset 5 happened, and because I didn't get Mindset 4, blew my mind. It didn't make sense. And that I can't even blame the comic. I just that happened. Um, Ninja Funk is a bizarre artistic mishmash of just random ideas and fun. And I think if I got this in my 20s, I would love it. Right now, it's just not hitting me. And that's not for its lack of trying. I think part of it too is this was the worst month for this to come out for me, uh, which is weird to think that, what week or month you buy a comic can actually really inform your opinion of it at times, especially with indie stuff where you're a lot easier to be hot or drop on it. And I think this just one suffered for being in a bit of a glut, more so than another book would have. I don't know what else to say here. Radiant Black continues. Hmm. um, and then one of the most wild books, Frank Miller, Philip Tan, Ronin 2. I don't necessarily know where this is going yet, but I was really excited by it. And what's really kind of interesting is that a lot of the pages are just these 2-page pinups across the book. And like, here's one finally with panels. Um, but it really grabbed me. And I know I've seen Philip Tan before, but I couldn't really place him. He's done a lot of like fill-in work for Marvel and DC and had a few moments with a handful of issues tied together, I guess, like he got an arc or something. But he's never really had a definitive run or anything that I could find when looking him up. If someone could correct me, I'd love it. But kind of an odd pick for a project like this, I think, but it looks great. Um, I'm really excited to see where this Ronin 2 thing goes. It seems bizarre to me, not only that it's happening, but that, like, even in the back of the book, it's like pick up Ronin 1, published by DC, but this one's published by Frank Miller Publishing. And so I think that's nifty, but I also think Frank Miller is pulling on a thread that only basically Frank Miller could in doing this, which makes it even more of an oddity. So I'm excited and waiting for the next there. A book that really took me by surprise was Specs. Um, this is playing off of an idea of some of those old ads in like Golden Age comics of these specs that you can kind of make wishes, not for anything too grand, but certain things. And they'll come around, but if possible, kind of have a monkey paws effect, but it won't always. So these kids are playing with it partially just to find the edges just because they're toying with it, but things start getting going and it ends in some bully dying. I feel like that I don't feel like that's a spoiler. Like I feel like but when you read the first page of what's happening, you know that's going to be happening soon. So I don't know, but the characters are here, and it is a couple of kids kind of finding that they're gay in the 80s, which I like the idea, but like the 80s again, I don't know. I think it'd almost be more fun if it was done nowadays. But interesting book. It really took me by surprise, and so I'm gonna keep going with it. I'm excited. Um, quick stops. This is Kevin Smith finding some people to do comics and just do random stories from characters from his movies, I guess. Um, as someone who's seen basically all the Kevin Smith stuff and whatnot, I mean, this was kind of a fun aside, but if you aren't into any of that or aren't familiar with that stuff, this is definitely going to be a miss for you. If you're a big Kevin Smith fan, you probably already picked it up. So I don't know, but if you're looking for Kevin Smith comics, I would actually highly recommend the old Clerks comic or Chasing Dogma, which is kind of what happens to Silent Bob and Jay between those two movies, between Chasing Amy and Dogma. And those are actually, I think, more fun comics in their own right. This feels more like this new age Kevin Smith, which is just like nostalgia for the old age Kevin Smith. So, yeah. Next is Traveling Mars. There's this guy who, I mean, the comic really drills it in, is a loser, baby. And he gets cancer, and they're looking for someone to do this journey to Mars, of which there's no real return. And because he'll be able to complete the trip, but in doing so, he'll actually get to live longer than shorter, um, he's been selected for it. He's not really excited about it, but the main reason he's doing it is because he's a loser, baby. But in for doing this mission, um, his family is going to get a huge paycheck, and one of his big concerns was not really leaving them behind with anything. Kind of. That's almost implied, not actually said. I don't know. It's it's a hell of a setup, but nothing about it grabbed me to make me want to keep reading. True Cavill continues. I thought this was actually gonna be closer to Clerks and ended up being closer to some horror thing. I don't know. Two Graves is playing on uh, vampires and other stock standard mythical sort of stuff. I don't know. I kind of faded out reading this one, so maybe I shouldn't talk about it too much. Um, Vanish 3 kind of put the nail in the coffin for me. I'm seeing more that this is for fans of the old school image that are getting a renaissance nowadays. I mean, all the Spawn, um, playing off of all of those old image comics that just died on the vine. This is kind of the new age of that kind of. I mean, this is an image comics image, not in the new image way, but very much in the tradition of what image was launched from. And that ain't me. But okay, this is the last one of the indies, but not the biggest this month, but any other month it would have been. Um, Voyages is a fun sci-fi romp. There's no humans. There's a lot of like blasters. It's more Star Wars than 2001 or Star Trek, I guess. But all aliens, all fun. But what's also cool from a comic book perspective is it's this Sume Kaseni. Um, I looked it up. She's a um, sorry, I'm forgetting the country she's from, but she's this comic artist who's come over and worked on a number of projects. But this is a primarily solo creator book with this crazy sci-fi thing like we don't normally get to see that you think would be stock standard fare for comics, um, being pulled through, and this is just a testament to what someone can do with the medium. Super fun, super exciting. Maybe not the deepest read. I don't think this is gonna get, that kind of normal press fare where people are looking for some true bit to the human spirit. But if you're a comic book fan and looking to see like what action can be done, what character can be done, and how you can do different things, and frankly, a story that doesn't involve any humans but isn't like a weird furry thing or anything like that. Oh my god, this is awesome. This is the kind of comic I've been waiting for like 20 years. And I'm so excited to finally be able to read this. So, yeah. Then X books. This Judgment Day was all Inhumans, so I cared even less. Um, this Immortal X-Men starting setup for the Sins of Sinister, but doing Mystique and Destiny in olden times. Legion of X. It was really funny. This book is playing off the idea that, oh my gosh, all of a sudden Nightcrawler has horns. But when they flashed this, I was like, oh, he grew a goatee? Is that what was new? No, he had that. What's going on? And it wasn't until a couple panels later that it's like, oh, there's horns there. It's just this page, the way the lines are drawn and the colors are pushed, like it pushes your eyes away from the horns. So it really stole the punch of what they were going for there. It's like, oh, Nightcrawler's looking more demonic. Okay. But I don't get why anybody would care. What a thud. Um, with this issue, Marauders convinced me that I should drop it, which is a big deal because once I start dropping some X books, um, we'll see how it goes. I ordered most of them for the next month, but there was actually far less to order. So then one that I think is really interesting is Sabretooth and the Exiles. This is really interesting because the whole play between the mutants and Orcus has been basically non existent through most of these books. There's some stuff at the beginning. There's a little play in like the main X-Men book when Duggan first took over. And now this one, and so it's Sabretooth dealing with in these like misfit mutants. It just feels like, huh, so someone's got to push the plot forward, I guess, and so it's the Fringes. Really weird. Um, this Wolverine issue was fun, but I think it's a great reason why, with books like this, you can't have the same creator doing a book like Wolverine and X Force at the same time. Because this Wolverine book had more relevance for X Force than pretty much the Wolverine stuff, even though it's playing directly out of the last issue. Um, and you could feel some of that in this X Force book. And so, like, really, yeah, can't read one without the other. Which, fine by me. I'm getting them both, I guess. But it's just one of those things I was feeling. But also some of the best X books of the month and some of the best Marvel of the month. Dugan's X-Men continues despite the cover. This was really Forge and Caliban going into the Egg City thing. I don't know. What a flop. And then Al Ewing's X-Men Red goes. I don't know. This comic really felt like it was up its own ass with all the weird stuff that they were pulling. And then, if you were a fan of Ann Nesenti's Longmont mini from before when I was born, there's this issue that follows it up now. Cool. And next month we'll be going back to when Willis Portacio was introducing Bishop. What a random run. I find that as X books get thinner in the pile every month, I enjoy them more. They need focus. So there we go. That was the books for the month. I did order some other things and trades and whatnot, but that's a different thing. And yeah, hope you all had a good month. Hope you all keep reading, and hopefully I'll get to talk to you soon.